Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to BWTM. We have a report from the island of Grenada. I'm with Earl Matterland. Earl, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for choosing to talk to BWTM.
Yeah, no problem.
The sunny island of Grenada. How is it for you today?
The view is actually it's not sunny as yet. It's not sunny as yet. I haven't even gone outside as yet. Got up like 5 minutes ago. It's cool.
Okay.
It's cool. Yeah. So I haven't seen everything as yet.
We know that.
Yeah.
We know that in Grenada, in the morning it's cool, and then come mid-morning, afternoon, the sun comes out, it starts beating down, and the heat is out, and the sun is on, eh?
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
So, you've contacted us because there's a lot of things you want to talk about the island and your personal story. So tell us a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about your story.
Okay. Well, I'm Earl Maitland, age 31. I have been doing numerous jobs in Grenada. Actually, right now, I am an advocate for justice in Grenada because I see it necessary. There is a great need for someone to speak up or for people to speak up because there's a lot of victimization here, especially when we are seeking assistance from public officers in Grenada. I myself am aware of many situations like mine, and I also am a victim, right? I have been to numerous public offices in Grenada seeking assistance and was refused or just given the runaround by these officers. I went to their bosses and so on, and nothing has happened. Last year, I was on a 2-year contract for a company at the Airport Aviation Services of Grenada, where I was constantly victimized, refused proper payments and so on of duties that I would have done. I went to the union, right? So we became unionized in about 2015, August 2015. No response, nothing from the union concerning my matters and so on. I've been to court as recent as 2 weeks ago, I believe. I've been to the Ministry of Labor a few days ago, and nothing is being done in the eyes of justice. Nothing as you would expect to happen is being done here in this country, the small country.
Why do you think that's the case?
I believe it's because people don't speak up. People don't speak up about injustices and so on in the country. I'm not sure if it's because they think they have no other options, right? But they just allow things to happen, and then we have corrupt people here running this country. We have a lot of corrupt people in the public offices that I'm going to speak about. We have people that don't appreciate the duties of their offices, and they actually act like if they're doing you a favor to execute the duties of their office.
So okay, let's go into detail about this. When people talk about Grenada, the common stereotypes are sun, sea, sand, music, soca, calypso, nightlife, leisure.
Yeah.
These are the things that these are the things that people associate with Grenada, and the nutmeg, the Isle of Spice. These are all the things that are the colourful, flamboyant things of the beautiful island, which is Grenada. But there also is a dark side to Grenada, which a lot of people don't want to talk about, or are feeling scared to talk about. Because I've been told on a number of occasions that there are people on the island that are scared to speak out. Why do you feel this need for you to speak out?
Because I believe there is need for change, for positive change. The only way we could actually progress is if we address the skeletons within our closet. I don't want my children to grow up and go through the same corrupt procedures and so on, and victimization when they are older, right? So I believe there should be change, and the time is now. There's no better time than the present. I believe also that it's getting too far, and it needs to stop.
Give us some examples of these victimizations so people can get a clear idea of what you've been going through, and then we can have a better idea as to what the circumstances have been.
Okay. Well, I have, as I was saying, I was working at the airport at Aviation Services of Grenada. I was even on my first contract. When I spoke to the manager there, as Mr. Scott, in a meeting, Mr. Scott introduced me to everyone. We had a discussion, the operations manager, the executive secretary. At the time of that interview, there was no human resource manager or officer, anything of the sort. I was issued a 2-year contract after my probationary period. On the starting of the job, I was told by the management team, the 3 people which I just mentioned, that I would have been given an assistant because I started working in the warehouse, right, which we refer to as the bond. I was given an assistant. The thing about it is the assistant was actually a clerical worker, as myself. There was no warehouse keeper. There was no one to lift the boxes and so on. Eventually, after numerous complaints and so on to the manager, to Mr. Scott and Mr. Hayward, who's the operations manager, concerning the lifting of the boxes and so on, because what they would do on some occasions when I would call and inform them that we have customers waiting here, we need someone to bring out the boxes there, and the boxes were actually heavy because it's a warehouse where people ship all different types of cargo and so on. I would be told, and the assistant, the clerical assistant, would be told as well that there was no one available, because what they did was take someone that worked for the same company but from a different department, where they would be dealing with the passenger service side of it. So I was dealing with cargo, and there was a passenger service side where they would have people checking in and lifting baggage and so on, loading the planes. On numerous occasions, I was told that there was no one to come down to the bond to do any lifting of any sort, because the planes were on the ground and so on. Being the hard-working, dedicated person that I am, I did not believe that the customers should be delayed because of the lack of proper organization from aviation services. So I was forced I had no other choice but to assist the customer and to lift the boxes and so on. After complaining about that over and over, the company saw it fit to, and this is possibly after 6 months, the company saw it fit to hire a person, a warehouse attendant, to do the lifting of the boxes and so on. After that, the clerical assistant was dismissed. I was left to do his duties. I had to do his duties and mine. I went to the manager. This was like a year after we began working at the company. I went to the management team. At this point, we had a human resource officer, not a human resource manager, but a human resource officer that I spoke to on many occasions relating the unethical procedures that the company was enforcing and so on, payments, everything. It was ridiculous. Nothing was done. Nothing was done. Approximately 1 year after commencing duties at the warehouse, the clerical assistant was fired. I personally did not believe what the reason for firing him was justified. I believe it could have been corrected if proper measures were taken into consideration, proper things were done. For instance, there is a company policy that I was aware of that a person would be written to, a person would be suspended, and then a person would be dismissed. I can't say that I am aware that they wrote him any letters, any warning letters or so on, but I am certain they did not at any time suspend the gentleman before firing him. I believe one of the reasons people do not act according to the Grenada Employment Act and so on, giving justifiable reasons and going through proper procedures and so on, is because there is a great lack of efficiency from the Ministry of Labor. If you look at the Labor Code, there are procedures set out. There are things that is saying that the Labor Commissioner should send the labor officers to look at workplaces and so on. Nothing like this, to my knowledge, has been done in the past, where you would see people just popping up to make sure that everything is going according to the law and so on. No matter you go to the Ministry of Labor and complain and so on, nothing is being done. You're being refused service and so on, which I would elaborate on deeper into the conversation. Now, when the gentleman was fired, the clerical assistant was fired, it was a struggle. It was a struggle to continue working in the bank, because I was on my own in the office doing the clerical duties. I was on my own. I spoke to the management team and I explained the stress of doing two different jobs, of doing two different things. I asked, right, that they get someone to fill the vacant position of the clerical assistant. I also gave them two other options when I realized that they were getting no one. Now, the guy that's doing the lifting and so on in the warehouse keeper, I actually trained him to do everything that needed to be done on the clerical side of the warehouse. I explained all of that to the management team. I asked them to give him an increase on his low salary that he was being paid. seeing that he was now capable and already doing clerical duties. They refused to do so. Instead of accepting the fact that the gentleman was already receiving a low salary, and he was now capable. He now expanded his reach in the company, doing something more positive instead of upgrading the young man who was about, I think he was probably about 22 years old, and he was doing a great job actually. They wrote me a letter, right, and told me that I did not have the right to decide that this young man should do anything clerical in the warehouse, right? So I wrote back to the management team and told them that, listen, you all told me that I need to do whatever I need to do to ensure the warehouse runs efficiently, and this is what I've done, right? They did not accept my letter. They did not respond. We did not have any meetings concerning that, whatever the case is, but letters were placed on my file, although I would write back and ask them to discuss it or to remove it. They would just keep it there on my file. The gentleman that was in the warehouse, up to today, to my knowledge, he has not been given the opportunity to upgrade himself in the company, although he was efficient and so on. I also gave them a third option, which was to give me an increase, seeing that my duties had increased, obviously increased. None of this was done. This had gone on for approximately 3 years after the clerical assistant was fired. I approached the shop steward who was there, that's Mr. Sampson, who was the shop steward for the permanent workers. I was told by Mr. Sampson that I was not able to become a member of the union that represented Aviation Services of Grenada. And I was actually left amazed, right? And I questioned his reasoning behind the fact that I, a worker of the same company, would not be able to be represented by a union that's representing the employees of the company. I was told that it's because I was a contract worker. And to me, that makes no sense, because the union was representing the employees of the company, and not just the people off a contract, right? Not just the permanent workers. A few months after, I approached the gentleman who promised that he would get back to me concerning my request to be represented by a union. Two young ladies came into the company on contract, just as I was, and the union rapidly responded by representing them, and they became permanent workers shortly thereafter. I then again went back to Mr. Sampson, who was the shop steward for quote-unquote permanent workers, and explained my disbelief in what had happened. And he told me that the union would get back to me. Nothing was done. I had to fend for myself throughout till I believe from 2012 2012 to about 2015, sometime August 2015, with no representation from the union that represented the employees of ASG. I was written letters upon letters for no reason. For instance, as ridiculous as it may sound, the uniforms that we were supposed to be issued with, the company would just measure me for a pants, and they would just present a shirt to me, right? Now, naturally, you would expect someone to measure you for a shirt as well, because it's something you need to wear. The shirts that I was issued with were too small for me. They were so small that I had to force into it. The company would say they don't have any more shirts, so I need to wear that. I would put on the shirt. The shirt would not button around my neck, and I would be approached by the operations manager, Michael Haywood, who would question the buttoning of my shirt, why it's not buttoned and so on. And I would explain to him on numerous occasions that the shirt was too small. I was not measured for it. It's no fault of mine that the shirt cannot button around the neck because I was not measured for it. I would receive letters for that concerning my dress code, that the shirt did not button right up to my neck, or the shirt was too tight. I spoke to Mr. Haywood. I spoke to Mr. Scott, and the gentleman agreed that I could purchase, because I was trying to avoid all of this. I told them that I would purchase my clothing to come to work and do their duties and so on, which they agreed. A few months after, everyone that made purchases and so on, because they did not issue uniforms when they were supposed to, everyone in the company except myself and the cleaner did not receive uniform allowances and so on, which was the mandatory thing that they had to do. In about August 2015, went back to the union because the company hired at least 10 contract workers, 10 to 15 contract workers, to do the JetBlue flights that we now have in Grenada. The employees, the new employees who were on probation, I believe were trained for a 2-week period. I'm subject to correction. They were offered, to my understanding, they were offered $10 per hour, right, to work the JetBlue flights. On completion of the probationary period and the training and so on, they were, hold on. Right, so the staff that was trained to do the JetBlue check-in and so on, they were offered $10 per hour. When they finished the training and so on, I was told by the workers, by the same staff, that they were called into the office of the human resource officer, and they were told that the company no longer is offering $10 per hour. They would now be paid $6.92 per hour. And this was done after I was told, according to the staff, the executive secretary asked if everyone had already ended all ties with the previous companies they worked with. And to me, this was a really ridiculous gesture to disguise the payments to mislead the workers and so on, because at that point they believed that they had no other option but to accept $6.92 an hour, because one of the main things in Grenada is that we do not know our rights, we do not know a lot about the laws and so on. And this is taken advantage of by employers, by public servants, and it is ridiculous. In addition to that, the JetBlue workers, the now JetBlue workers, decided they would have no choice but to accept $6.92 per hour, which they did. The company also hired numerous contract workers. I was told it was their new thing. They actually hired grown men and offered them $5 an hour with a guarantee of 4 hours a day, which is equivalent to $20 per day. Now, the guarantee of 4 hours per day was the company's way of ensuring that the good citizens of Grenada were exploited, and the company would keep all the funding and so on, whatever they were supposed to be paying out to workers. The full guarantee of 4 hours a day meant that any worker that came in to deal with a flight, once the flight has left, if the flight has left in 2 hours, you come, you lift heavy bags, you park the aircraft, you park the cargo, you do whatever it is you have to do. If the flight leaves in 3 hours, 4 hours, half an hour, you would have no choice but to leave in 4 hours. So you would not be working a full hour day as prescribed by the Employment Act, an 8 hour day, nothing like that. You would just come, do a whole pile of work in no time, because they would actually rush you to do the work. That's it. And you go home after 4 hours. So the sad thing about it is that some of these people that were getting $20 a day had to pay transportation to come to the airport to work. And the fee from town to the airport is actually $10 for the trip. Now,
that's slave labor. That's slave labor.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's crazy. You know, you pay $10 to come to work for $20. You end up with what, $10? You still had to buy lunch. You still had to go out the road. So you see people bombing rides and so on. And the fact that jobs are hard to get in Grenada, as we say, that is exploited by this company in particular, and other companies. Just a few days ago, I was contacted by a young lady who was dismissed from her job via a WhatsApp message. She was refused salary. She was refused a dismissal letter. Now, I blame the Ministry of Labor for that, because this just shows that the employers in Grenada that are supposed to be working within the boundaries of our Employment Act, which is supposed to be enforced by the Ministry of Labor, they don't care, because they do not have respect for the Ministry of Labor, who we are paying taxes to and so on. Now, the guys that were working for $20 a day, they came, they complained. I decided, okay, listen, this is what we'll do. We will go to the union, right, and state our grievances and so on. We went to the union building, which was in town. A group of us workers, we went there. Um, People, although scared, were frustrated to the point where they actually took a stance. And this is something that you hardly see happen in Grenada, where people would actually take a stance for something they believe in. So they went to the Labour building with me. We spoke to Justin Campbell. We were told that we would be represented, and not only represented, but represented without bias by the Banker General Workers Union. Mr. Justin Campbell is the president of the union. Now, we stated so many things, the slave labor, the payments, the refusal, and one of the things that I forgot to mention, right, because there are so many incredible things, right, that I forgot to mention. Now, the workers would normally, and even after we became unionized, they were refused their lunch hour. They were not even paid for their lunch hour. Now, according to the labor code, the Employment Act of Grenada, an employee has to agree to forfeit the lunch hour and be paid for it, but you have to agree. Now, we had supervisors running around telling people they can't eat while they're on their lunch hour. Somebody might go eat for like 2 minutes, and the supervisor would come and threaten them to, if they don't leave what they're doing, leave the eating, and come and do the company's work, they would be brought to the office of Mr. Scott, right? And for some reason, people who were scared to go there because of the threats of being fired and so on. People left their food, what they needed. Some people were suffering with migraines and so on, which was raised in a meeting with the HR officer, Miss Claudia and Frank. All these things were raised with Miss Frank. Nothing was done. Even though she was the HR person, she was supposed to seek the interests of the employees, to my understanding. Even the employers were to seek the interests of the employees, not even realizing by depriving people from feeding themselves that they would actually not be as effective. They might be grumpy, they might not present proper passenger service and so on. So it was just a bad management skills from these people. So when we went to the union, we were told that we would be represented by Mr. Campbell. We had a poll. I was elected shop steward, at which point I tried my best to accommodate each member of the contract workers, because numerous times, time and time again, almost daily, people would come to me and complain, listen, I was on probation and the company extended my probation without telling me. This happened to one of the young ladies that came into the company. She was actually offered a job, started the job. She was told her probationary period would be 3 months. After the probationary period, nothing was said to her. She would have been told by one of the supervisors and the human resource officer that her probationary period had been extended, right, for a further 2 months, and this was told to her on the 4th month. which is, to me, is not an expected practice of a company. I believe you would speak to a person at the end of the probationary period and tell them, listen, these are things that you need to work on. Or even during the time, you would not just hire someone and leave them to believe what they are doing is correct. You would actually tell them, listen, this needs to be done this way, right? You cannot expect somebody to just join the field of aviation and become an expert, right? Now, there was a lot of things that was going on. There was a guy, the warehouse keeper, right? The guy that lifted the boxes and so on. He was told that he was a contract worker. So what I did was I asked everyone to bring in their contracts so I could have a look at the terms and conditions and the payments of the employees and so on, to build a case for the union to show the underpayments, how drastic it was. We have people getting $5 an hour, $6.92 an hour. Now, this is a company that does work for ground handling and cargo and everything for companies like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, Caribbean Airlines, some cargo for Liat, sometimes Condo. We're talking about JetBlue, many airlines. So you would expect that the reward for doing that would be profitable for the employee. But this was not done. When I collected the contracts and so on, I discovered that the warehouse attendant, although being told he was a contract worker, he had no contract. He had a job offer. The warehouse attendant worked there for 3 years under the guise that he was a contract worker. And the company knew that he was not a contract worker. He was never issued a contract. I spoke to the union on many occasions, brought it up in meetings with the management team and told them that, listen, this guy is not a contract worker, which means he is supposed to be paid the same rate as any other permanent worker as you all have it, which meant that he was deprived of, he was getting like $400 less than he was supposed to be getting, less than a permanent worker per month. Plus there were increases and so on. Leslie Scott, the manager, in the meeting, made statements that no, he would not pay, and he doesn't believe he has to pay the gentleman and so on. And approximately 1 day after, the gentleman was called in the office and was told that he would be paid, but due to my calculations and so on, and I am a math teacher, due to my calculations of the shortages that were reflecting on the man's paycheck, he was supposed to get over $10,000 for the 3 years he was there, right? So we speaking about $400 times 12 times 3 years. Instead, he was given or offered approximately $3,000. And the sad thing about it is that he accepted the $3,000. Of course, they took out union dues and so on. He received about $2,500. And I believe after speaking to him and so on, he did not want to be seen as a troublemaker. He did not want to be further victimized by the company because he was remaining in the company. He was remaining he was going to stay there and work because he believed that it's so hard to get a job in this country. There were many situations, but on January 26, 2016, I was told by some of the contract staff that they were called into the office of the Human Resource Officer, Claudian Frank, and they were told that they would be receiving half month's pay for January because they were being paid by the hour, and the accounts department was having issues in calculating the different salaries and the different rates for the contract employees. I called in the union. I spoke to the accounts department. I spoke to the manager, Mr. Scott, concerning that. Just on the 26th of the month, you can't just call in employees and tell them that you would be giving them half of their salary for the month of January because your accounts department is having problems in making payments. And these same workers they were there since about June 2014, receiving the same small salaries, right? The same small rates and everything. I was further victimized on that day. I was dismissed from my duties that day. I went to the main office, right? So I left the warehouse and went to the main office because there was no computers there for me to access programs which I needed to execute the duties of my office. For instance, Customs has a program that you need to enter cargo and transfer cargo and so on called ASICUDA, which of course you would need internet access, you would need computers and so on. There were no computers in the warehouse, despite my many attempts to persuade Leslie Scott to purchase a computer to put in the warehouse so I could do my job, which he refused to do. So I left the bond and I went to the main office to use the computer. I was dealing with a customer at the moment, and I was told by one of the employees that Michael Haywood, the operations manager, wanted to speak to me on the phone. Now, normally when Mr. Haywood calls, I would tell the person to tell Mr. Haywood I'll call him back shortly, which was the natural thing to do. If you're dealing with a customer, you don't want to keep them waiting and so on. So I did that. I said I would ask Mr. Haywood to give me some time. I'll call him when I'm finished. When I did call back Mr. Haywood, the gentleman started ranting, as we would say in Grenada, with an attitude. I don't want to speak to you over the phone. Come to my office. Now, this is a gentleman that I made at least 3 reports to Claudian Frank, the HR officer, that would have threatened to fire me for him and other persons misplacing documents that I left for him, right? And he was very full of ego. I can't think of any good words to describe the gentleman, but he threatened to fire me. He would call randomly when he misplaced documents and just say to me, I feel to send your ass home, right? And I would call the HR officer because I was not raised as a disrespectful person. So not respond in his type of manner. I would say to Mr. Hayward, why would you say that to me? Why would you speak like that? And I would call the HR officer and explain and say, listen, this is the third time this man is speaking to me like that disrespectfully. And nothing was done. So I went into this man's office expecting to be disrespected again and having to go through different channels to deal with it and so on. He asked me to, first of all, he started off by saying that whenever he calls me, I need to drop whatever I'm doing and run to him, right? Then he started explaining in his own way that if the manager, who's Leslie Scott, had made any attempts to reach him, he would leave what he's doing and go to Mr. Scott, right? We agreed, right? We agreed that next time he made any attempts to get me anytime he calls, I would leave what I'm doing and go to his office, right? Or take the phone call, whatever it is I'm doing. We agreed to that. That's what he wanted, although how ridiculous it would sound. We agreed to that. He also lost. I lost. Keep going. Hold on, 1 sec. Okay, so after we agreed that I would leave whatever it was that I was doing and go to him for answered phones and so on, he asked me to apologize for not taking the call, which I did. Right, I did apologize for not taking his call. At that point, after he made me agree and apologize, he asked me what I was doing when he called. And I said to Mr. Hayward, well, I believe we passed that stage now. That should have probably been the first thing he asked, what I was doing, instead of giving the attitude and telling me that I need to run to you and so on. He brought me to the office of Leslie Scott, and I was right there and then dismissed by the manager, right? They stated in the letter that I was dismissed for gross insubordination, and because I had other letters on my file, for instance, I was unable to work an 8-hour period a day. I was unable to do that because I was the only one in the warehouse, the only clerical person, despite my many attempts for the company to get assistance again. Of course, my body would have been tired from doing double shifts, double work, double duties every day, from being forced to lift boxes and so on. I did reach late. I would reach late to work. I would explain to them, listen, y'all need to get somebody because my body is tired. There's only so much I can take. I'm only human, and I have those things written in letters that I would have given to ASG and so on, and nothing was done, no response. When I was dismissed, I went to the union. I went to Justin Campbell, the president of the union. He inquired if I wanted the job back. I told Mr. Campbell that I was already frustrated. I don't think that it was a healthy decision that I returned to a job like that, because I had sick leaves for my back because I was forced to lift boxes. I had a sick leave. There was once I had a sick leave for stress. I believe the doctor entered it as F41. That's the code for stress. I was actually really stressed out on the job, despite how strong I believed that I was. There's only so much a person could take, right? You'll be going down there to work on your way to work, and then your head might start to hurt you. You may just get like a panic attack or something because okay, every time I'm down here, you're being victimized. Nothing is done the right way. For doing good things, for educating people about the laws and so on. Because in order to address certain things, I had to take certain measures, certain steps, including the union and so on. I would be victimized for that on a daily basis. The HR officer would come and threaten to extend my work day from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. They would tell me that I need to cut my beard. I would get letters of concern in my beard. It was much smaller than this, right? It was really ridiculous and so on. Mr. Justin Campbell, the president of the union, I told him that because of all these things, I believe that I should not return, but instead what I would want is to be compensated for doing 2 different duties, since they did not get back the clerical assistant, and they only made promises every day, almost every day I should say, to give me a raise on the salary for actually taking on and effectively doing 2 different duties. I wrote them a letter, right? Mr. Campbell asked me to write a letter, although he had all the information, because this union, since August 2014, right, did nothing for the contract workers up until the point where I was dismissed in January 2016. The union actually took they took from August to early December to do up a contract proposal, to do a proposal to aviation services for the contract workers. Every day I called Mr. Campbell and asked Mr. Campbell from the first meeting we had in August to December. I would call and ask Mr. Campbell, how far along are you with the contract, the proposal, sorry. We need the proposal, we need the conditions to change, we need people to access their constitutional rights, with the Employment Act, getting the lunch hour, everything. And I would be brushed off, I would be told next week Friday. It took from August to December. Upon receiving the proposal in my email, I stayed up whole night during the drastic situation at the airport. Stayed up whole night, read through the contract, the proposal, noticed that there were many errors, which was unexpected for something that took from August to December by the union's president. I corrected it. I sent it back to Mr. Campbell the next day because I did believe that change should have happened there and then, sooner than later. Upon sending it back, nothing was done from early December to January 26th. The proposal was never shown to Aviation Services of Grenada. We're talking almost 2 months, and nothing was done, although the contract was, the proposal was sent back to the union after even having discussions with the contract workers and so on what they believe should be and what should not be. Mr. Campbell told me he would call me back, he would speak to them concerning the double duties, because we also spoke about compensation for those duties in at least 4 meetings with the management team. And nothing was done during my work period there. It took weeks. No one responded to my messages. I called Mr. Campbell many times on his cell phone, on his office phone. I would hear the secretary tell Mr. Campbell, Maitland is calling, and you would hear Mr. Campbell in the background saying, tell him I'm not there, right? You're not taking the calls, you're not returning the calls. I would say, okay, ask Mr. Campbell to return a call tomorrow, leave voice messages on his cell phone and so on. He did not respond. He did not respond. So after months had passed and nothing was done, Aviation Services, Mr. Scott was not responding to my requests for compensation, although we had discussed it in meetings before and it was said that I would be compensated and so on. I don't know if he believed that because I was no longer an employee, I was not entitled to what was rightfully mine. The union was of no assistance. I went to the Ministry of Labor and I was speaking to a labor officer who shockingly, surprisingly, after stating my grievances and me not being represented by my union, she began speaking about her issues. And at that point, I said to the officer that, months had passed since I've been waiting on the union and aviation services, and I would like to speak to the labor commissioner, who's Cyrus Griffith. Right? I said I would like to speak to this gentleman, because if you are experiencing problems and you can't deal with it, how would you address mine? Right? She went into the gentleman's office, spoke to the gentleman, Mr. Griffith, and Mr. Griffith told the lady that I need to go back to the union and exhaust the union, although explained that the union was doing nothing to help my cause, which is a contradiction to the labor, the employment code of Grenada, because I believe somewhere around 89, section 89, it says, it's somewhere around there, can't remember exactly where, but in the duties of the labor commissioner is somewhere between 70 and 80, 89, that anytime any steps, this is basically what it's saying, anytime any steps are breached in taking industrial action and so on, the labor commissioner has to step in and ensure that it goes according to what is expected by law. And to see that I was turned away says a lot about the labor commissioner. It says a lot about the Ministry of Labor. It says a lot about the government. Now, to have such a person there or not even having the decency to come to a taxpayer, a citizen of the country, to actually grace with the presence or so on, or just Even if you don't believe you need to come to speak to me, the professional thing would be to just show your face. But he refused to do so. I went to the ombudsman, right, and I spoke to the ombudsman. I explained everything in detail, much better than I would be doing here now, because there was time. And the ombudsman believed that I had been, my rights of seeing the Labor Commissioner and so on had been breached. And they wrote the Ministry of Labor. They also wrote Aviation Services. Aviation Services is a government, the parent body is the Grenada Airports Authority, which is run by the government. They wrote the Ministry of Labor. The Ministry of Labor would have responded to the Ombudsman's letter on the 25th or the 26th of April 2016. They would have explained the procedures to take industrial action and so on. They would also have, in the final paragraph, written that they would organize a meeting between the two parties, which I believe were me as the complainant and possibly the company or Mr. Cyrus Griffith, the Labor Commissioner. It was only at that point, a few weeks after, that Leslie Scott saw it fit to respond to a letter that I wrote to the company asking to be granted what was due to me. The ombudsman received the letter and nothing was done. I was asked to wait and wait and wait by one of the gentlemen working at the ombudsman's office. Now the ombudsman is an entity that is set up in Grenada to deal with complaints of public offices and so on. Just being asked to just sit around and wait, and I was asking, well, how long am I supposed to wait? We're already in like months past and nothing's happening. It is scary. It is scary to see that people would be exposed to situations like this and so on, and having the feeling that nothing could be done, right? Nothing could be done. No justice could be reached. Nothing is happening here. It is scary. It is disappointing. And by the grace of God, I got through it and I was able to move on and try to keep doing things. I wrote a letter to the union. I sent them an email. That was after the fact that the gentleman was not responding to calls and not taking calls and so on. Up till today, Mr. Campbell, another one from the Bank and General Workers Union, has responded to my email. I would gladly post or send you a copy of such a letter. I went to a lawyer, right, because there was no other option, I believe. There was no other option to get justice. The ombudsman just said that I need to wait and see what's happening. The Ministry of Labor, I believe, was the permanent secretary that sent the response to the ombudsman, said that they would organize a meeting since April 26th last year. nothing was done. There was no meeting. I went to a lawyer in January of this year, and we filed some claims in the court. And surprisingly, the court is saying that I cannot claim for unfair dismissal. I need to claim for wrongful dismissal, and ruled in favor of the company, Aviation Services, strike out one of my claims, which was unfair dismissal, and ordered me to pay $500 to the company, right? I am of the opinion that after the court would have been privy to all this information that was presented, right, in further detail and so on, that some form of justice would have been served. But nothing was done. I am a victim, and I am now being ordered to pay $500 to the culprits. On that day, I returned to the Ministry of Labor as soon as I came from court, because I will guarantee that I will stop at nothing before I receive justice. I returned to the Ministry of Labor, and I went directly to the Permanent Secretary and explained to the Permanent Secretary my situation, my disgust in the system in Grenada, and in the exhibition from the Labor Commissioner last year. And I indicated that there shouldn't have been any need for me to get the services of an attorney to go to court, because there is a law in Grenada. There's a Employment Act which should govern anything that deals with employment. The Labor Commissioner, the Ministry of Labor, this is what they are here for. And because of their negligence, their neglect, their refusal to do what they are supposed to do, I had to go to court, and now I'm being fined $500. She spoke to the Cyrus Griffith, the Labor Commissioner. She and the Permanent Secretary that's there now told me that she was not the person that was there last year. So I could excuse her for that. She spoke to Cyrus Griffith. He came across. I explained again that it was because of his refusal to do his duty that I had to go to court to take legal action. The gentleman responded by saying he would organize a meeting the Thursday of that week. On the Thursday of that week, we were supposed to meet with Cyrus Griffith and Aviation Services, whoever represented the Aviation Services. I received a call the Tuesday, because I went to court the Monday and went over to the Ministry of Labor on the same day. On the Tuesday, I received a call from Cyrus Griffith stating that Aviation Services would not be able to make it to the meeting on Thursday, but they would be able to make it to a meeting the following Thursday, to the same meeting the following Thursday. So the meeting date, it was postponed. I agreed and went into further conversation with Mr. Griffith, and he requested that I come to his office before the meeting so I could present my documents and state my claims and so on before the meeting with Aviation Services. So he told me that we would still meet Thursday at 2 p.m. and then we would meet with ASG the following Thursday at 2 p.m. I spoke to my attorney. We went to the gentleman's office with the documents that he would have requested and so on, so he could have like a clear interpretation of my claims and so on. When we got there, minutes to 2, I was told by the secretary of Mr. Griffith that he was not there. I also met 2 other ladies there that said that Mr. Griffith said that he would be meeting them at 2:30. His secretary was saying to me that he went to lunch. Now I was in disbelief that we had a meeting at 2 o'clock. He scheduled a meeting for 2 o'clock, something that was supposed to happen over a year ago, and to no fault of mine, did not happen. She told me he went to lunch. I sat there. I asked her to call Mr. Griffith to find out what was happening. This was, I believe, about 15 minutes after 2 o'clock, which she said she would do. About 15 minutes after that, I had to return to the gentleman's secretary to find out if she did get in contact with him, because I did have a meeting, I do have things to do. And she said that she asked someone else to call him, and the person has not responded to her as yet. Now I asked her to see if she could get in contact with him, because I did have things to do. I was a bit frustrated seeing that it would take so long, and then a meeting would be organized by the gentleman and he would disappear. He would not show up to the meeting and so on. Now, about, I would say, 5 minutes past 3, Mr. Griffith walked into the building and came to his office. And this is an hour and minutes later. And he would make the comment that I did not organize any meetings today. And this is how the gentleman came into the office. He did not even have the decency to say good afternoon and so on. He did invite my attorney and I to one of the rooms at the labor office. There was an obvious, how should I put it? There was an obvious dislike for our presence, for the presence of my attorney and I. The gentleman began complaining that he was busy, he has other things to do, he did not invite me to come today, and I explained to the gentleman that he asked me to come in today before the meeting next week Thursday to present the documents of my claim and so on. He was obviously annoyed. It's my opinion that the gentleman left minutes to 2, right? So he would not have the meeting, possibly hoping that I got frustrated for waiting for an hour after waiting for an hour. So I would leave, and then possibly he might say, well, he asked me to come in and I did not come in, I did not show up, anything like that. Despite the fact that that was done, he wasted our time, nothing happened. Throughout the conversation we had on that day, I believe, as a reasonable person, a reasonable thinking person, that he did disrespect me and my attorney. He was just cutting throughout the conversation. We would try to make a statement and he would just cut it, take phone calls, make phone calls, speak about how tired he was, speak about the union not doing their duties, and he was actually not doing his duty, and he was pointing fingers to the union. That this we mentioned, it was not relevant what the union did. It is about what he, as a labor commissioner, would do at this point, and what he refused to do last year. He ended the meeting abruptly. We went back the following Thursday to meet with Aviation Services, who was represented by Leslie Scott, Michael Hayward, Claudia, and Frank. They were seated by the time we got there. The gentleman would have asked, and we're speaking about Cyrus Griffith, the Labour Commissioner. He would ask us to state our purpose and our claims at the starting of the meeting. My attorney did state our purpose. She began by saying that the reason for the meeting is that I believe, her client, which is me, believed that I was unfairly dismissed, and the meeting should have happened sooner than it did happen that day on the Thursday. But I was denied my right to industrial action and so on, and Mr. Griffith would just cut in and tell her that is not necessary now. And all she needs to do is just state what I want from the company. And the attorney said to the gentleman that we haven't even established whether I was unfairly dismissed, right? And I believe that should have been done. He wanted us to just straight away just start stating what I wanted and so on. He had a very large ego. It was unnecessary. He did not seem like the type of person that you would put to counsel someone into doing the right thing. His presentation, it was terrible. Somebody that you would expect in a public office to at least appear to be fair. This was not the case. The gentleman was obviously biased. He would ask questions concerning my dismissal, concerning letters that were placed on my file. When the representatives from Aviation Services would speak, the gentleman would take notes. When I would speak or my attorney would speak, the gentleman would not write anything. He would not take any notes. Eventually, he started boasting about he studied in England and where he studied, and he was in the position for a very long time, and called out the college that he went to and so on, which I believe was irrelevant to the matter at hand. We were not dealing with the qualifications of Mr. Griffith or where he went to school. but we were dealing with a clear case of victimization that happened under his watch as the Labor Commissioner, and it was not being fairly addressed. The gentleman made comments after being told again that I was not represented by the union, made comments that would have implied that I was the reason why the union did not represent me. The attorney did state that the representation would not be done as a favor, but it would be done as a duty, right? And it would not matter personal or whatever the case might be, that they did have a duty to represent me, and the fact that they are not representing me shows their level of professionalism. I did indicate to Mr. Griffith that I realized that he was trying to imply that in some way that I may have disrespected Mr. Campbell, Justin Campbell, the president of the union. I did indicate to him that I am not a disrespectful person. I do not disrespect people. It is really sad that in Grenada, people tend to think that you are a troublemaker or you are disrespectful when you're standing for your rights or when you're stating your rights. People see you as a quote unquote a threat, right? It is ridiculous. You look at other countries. I'm sure that you have various bodies ensuring that the Constitution is followed and so on, but Grenada is a place of silence. It is a place of silence. Nothing happens here. Nothing at all. We went to the meeting. We were told that we would be contacted by Mr. Griffith after he does an investigation into the matter. He would call the Bank and General Workers Union. I also indicated to the gentleman that I did go to the umbrella body of the union, which is the Trade Union Council. I spoke to Kenny James, who is the president of the Trade Union Council, explained the matter to Mr. James. Mr. James, since December till last week, did not contact or speak of my situation, me not being represented by the union until last week. And we were speaking about since early December, where the Trade Union Council would have met with Mr. Campbell at least once per month, although given his number as well. So what we're seeing here is just a number of people placed in significant positions that are refusing to do anything, right? They're refusing to do what needs to be done. This is why the country is the way it is, and it is really sad. So that's the story with aviation services. I do hope that it does inspire other victims like me to speak out about the dark side of Grenada, right? And I hope it does eliminate or begins the elimination process with such terrible things here. So thanks again for contacting me. Thanks for the opportunity, and have a good day.
Thank you so much for talking to BWTM.